China poses a huge threat in the digital space, promoting disinformation, conducting cyber attack. China's real estate industry is just a tragedy under the shadow of the Communist Party of China. Expert, new U.S.-China working groups hope to prevent China's Lehman moment. It's all covered in today's China Truths. China poses a huge threat in the digital space, promoting disinformation, conducting cyber attack. CCP digital authoritarianism seeks to control the global information environment. Moreover, Beijing's hacker capabilities go beyond manipulating the information space and could be applied to direct attacks on critical infrastructure or military targets. Those problem is discussed in the article CCP Threat in the Digital Space, published October 3 by Mr. Antonio Gracefo. Mr. Gracefo is a China economic analyst who has spent more than 20 years in Asia. The U.S. Department of State on September 28 released the Global Engagement Center Special Report, How the People's Republic of China, PRC, Seeks to Reshape the Global Information Environment, which claimed that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has invested billions of dollars in a strategic campaign of disinformation around the world, designed to manipulate the global information space. The report reads, Beijing seeks to maximize the reach of biased or false pro-PRC content. The State Department also warned that the CCP's actions were not merely a diplomatic misstep but a challenge to information integrity and availability around the world. Beijing's reaction was typical of the CCP. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement denying any culpability, claiming, the U.S. Department of State report is in itself disinformation as it misrepresents facts and truth. The issue, of course, is that the U.S. State Department's accusations are true and firmly supported by years of investigations and public reports. The CCP's United Front Work Department, UFWD, attempts to control the flow of information outside of China by silencing dissent, spying on the Chinese diaspora, and disseminating overseas propaganda. The CCP employs influencers, online bots, and troll armies to support its efforts to shape the narrative around Taiwan, Xinjiang, and the South China Sea. Additionally, the UFWD pushes news stories and online information against the United States and in support of Beijing's foreign policies. In Latin America and Africa, the CCP exploits its relationships with local media to shape the narrative and dispel criticism of Chinese investment projects and debt trap diplomacy. Another tool in the CCP's online arsenal is the Wumao Army or 50-Cent Army, people who post on social media sites such as Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and X, formerly known as Twitter. First documented about 20 years ago, the Wumao are believed to number in the hundreds of thousands. They work around the clock on social media, pushing CCP propaganda or countering content that the CCP disapproves of. The Wumao were particularly busy around the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic when they portrayed China as the world's savior while diverting attention away from Wuhan as the origin of the virus. They continue to operate in force, shifting their focus as foreign policy evolves and reacting to world opinions of China. Russia is increasingly alienated from the international order, so Moscow and Beijing are working together to control the information space. This is evident in online efforts by both countries to support the Kremlin's narrative on the Russia-Ukraine war. To achieve this goal, the CCP state-backed trolls have spread disinformation about the Kyiv government and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In February last year, the two countries issued the joint statement of the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China on the international relations entering a new era and the global sustainable development, which included numerous references to collaboration in information society and security. The problem with totalitarian regimes discussing information security is that the leaders will determine which information poses a threat and whether information must be protected or censored. The U.S. intelligence community is concerned that Beijing's hacker capabilities go beyond manipulating the information space and could be applied to direct attacks on critical infrastructure or military targets. The People's Liberation Army Unit 61398, the CCP's official hacker unit, was uncovered in 2013, operating under several names, including APT-1, Comment Crew, Comment Panda, TG8223, Group 3, and GIF89A. They engage in spyware, ransomware, data theft, cyber espionage, and other online attacks against the United States and other governments, and against media and people critical of the regime. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence's 2023 Annual Threat Assessment states that China probably currently represents the broadest, most active, and persistent cyber espionage threat to the U.S. government and private sector networks. China almost certainly is capable of launching cyber attacks that could disrupt critical infrastructure services within the United States, including against oil and gas pipelines and rail systems. In May this year, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency issued a cybersecurity advisory regarding activity by a CCP state-backed cyber actor known as Volt Typhoon, which was believed to pose a threat to both infrastructure and private companies. China's real estate industry is just a tragedy under the shadow of the Communist Party of China. The arrest of Su Jiayin, the founder of China Evergrande, has aroused continued public attention. Several senior observers reviewed the rise and fall of China's real estate industry and pointed out that China's real estate itself is just a tragedy under the shadow of the power of the Chinese Communist Party. Scholar, China's real estate itself is a tragedy. When talking about the Evergrande incident, Professor Fong Chongyi of the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia, said on October 3 that China's real estate itself is a tragedy. He recalled that China's real estate industry began to rise in the 1990s, which produced a group of wealthy people. Their wealth came from the CCP. The Communist Party eliminated all kinds of land property rights and personal property rights. After plundering them, it owned all the land resources in China, then put them on the market, separated ownership from use rights, and developed real estate for real estate developers. The real estate selling is controlled by the government. It requires connections and bribes to get the land. So real estate developers have become official businessmen of a country, and these people have become a dark class, transformed into rich men. Fong Chongyi said that real estate has the concept of a Ponzi scheme, which is to borrow new money to roll over, absorbing people's money in the process. Its own profit margin is not high, so its debt plate is getting bigger and bigger. Until now, the real estate market has come to an end, no one is getting out, banks no longer dare to provide more loans, and it has reached a dead end. Many years ago, everyone said it had come to an end. The Chinese Communist government is very dependent on the land economy and is doing everything possible to expand the real estate sector, even if the supply exceeds demand, and it becomes a bubble economy. Fong Chongyi said that in order to prevent it from bursting, the government added new debt through banks and urban investment companies, and created a layer of bubbles to wrap it up. The three parties, government, real estate developers, banks, conspired to continue to push up the already oversupplied real estate and then profit from it. Real estate, accounts for 25% to 30% of the domestic GDP, and the government doesn't want it to go bankrupt, so it has been kept there. Today it really can't be saved. Su Jiayin is the most typical example. The reason why Evergrande is allowed to die slowly is that the government and many powerful people knew in advance that there was a crisis, and they had to withdraw the money first and liquidate it before they could bankrupt it. Fong Chongyi said that Su Jiayin is now arrested because Xi Jinping wants to throw the scapegoat out and deny all these responsibilities. Using their crimes to offset the government's responsibilities and debts is the outcome. Analysis: China's real estate is essentially anti-market development. Evergrande's explosion is a fate. Wang He, an expert on China issues, said on October 3 that China's real estate is actually not truly market-oriented, but has developed in an anti-market model. It means that the government monopolizes land, then raises the price of the land and sells it at a high price, and the government gets huge financial revenue. Through the establishment of land finance, the government has carried out a lot of construction, but the wool comes from the sheep, and the costs are passed on to the people. Wang He said that real estate has expanded rapidly in the past 2 decades. Xi Jinping has felt that real estate is very dangerous since 2016. At that time, he shouted that housing should be lived in and not be speculated, but he could not control it at all. It was not until 2020 that the authorities took a tough stance and implemented the Three Red Lines policy. It was originally intended to allow real estate to have a soft landing, but it unexpectedly burst the bubble. Because a company like Evergrande has developed abnormally and has no internal normal business operation mechanism, it just keeps making money and creating false income to pay huge dividends. Over the years, Evergrande has been hollowed out by people like Su Jiayin. Wang He pointed out that Evergrande's demise is a fate. By the end of 2022, Evergrande's liabilities were 2.4 trillion CNY, its total assets were 1.8 trillion, and its net liability was 600 billion. This is a very ridiculous thing, and it is inevitable that it will explode. Evergrande will be doomed, and China's real estate market will be doomed. He said that the Evergrande incident has made the entire Chinese real estate industry and China's economy even worse. The various operating methods of Su Jiayin have now stunned foreigners, who think that China's economy is a trap. Evergrande's problems have been hidden for 10 years. As early as June 21, 2012, Citron Research, a well-known short-selling institution in the United States, issued a short-selling report on Evergrande, accusing Evergrande of fraud, including insolvency and the use of various accounting deceptions. The report pointed to 5 crimes, including its inability to repay debts, and 7 major crises, including serious insufficient cash deposit collection, rapidly growing expensive debt, and a sharp decline in pre-sales. On October 3, Zhao Longyan, a former Chinese media person living in the United States, also said that in 2012 and 2013, Evergrande was already in big trouble. Zhao Longyan disclosed that the Evergrande headquarters has a department similar to the Public Security Bureau. His cousin had previously worked in this department at Evergrande and was exposed to more and more internal reporting materials within the company. The amounts involved in the reporting were staggering, and the internal and external relationships involved were even greater. It's extremely complex. His cousin was later overwhelmed by the huge workload and tremendous psychological pressure and left Evergrande. Regarding the fact that the authorities are now targeting Su Jiayin, Zhao Longyan believes that the authorities may think that the losses will be smaller if they act now, and they cannot sustain it at all. In the end, the people will be the victims. Su Jiayin and Evergrande got into trouble under the control of Beijing. According to previous mainland media reports, Evergrande is the first private enterprise in Guangzhou to establish a party committee. The group has a total of 35 party committees, 18 general party branches, 1,023 party branches, and 10,841 party members. Su Jiayin, who is the secretary of the Evergrande Party Committee, often says that Evergrande is the Evergrande of the party. In September 2018, when Su Jiayin received the 10th China Charity Award, he declared, "Everything about Evergrande and me was given by the party." Zhao Longyan said that Evergrande's mistakes are actually the mistakes of the Chinese Communist Party, because it has always been under the leadership of the party. These mistakes are no longer the fault of a private company or individual. Feng Chengyi said that Xi Jinping now wants to fully control everything. The authorities have established party organizations in private enterprises. Although it is a peripheral thing, its most critical thing is the control of people, finances, and materials. It turned out that this party organization was not that important, and its ability to control was gradually lost. After Xi Jinping came to power, he carried out totalitarian restoration and returned to the Mao era. He made the party organization play its role again. Expert, new U.S.-China working groups hope to prevent China's Lehman moment. The U.S. Treasury Department has recently forged working groups with China on economic and financial matters. A China affairs observer believes the move is designed to minimize the risk of a significant shock to the United States and the world in the event of a Chinese economic collapse. The U.S. Department of Treasury announced September 22 that one of the groups will focus on economic topics, working with China's Ministry of Finance, and the other on financial topics, partnering with China's central bank, the People's Bank of China. The establishment of the working groups could be seen as a result of discussions by U.S. diplomats with their Chinese counterparts during visits to China this summer. Those efforts included a July talk between U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng, as well as a late August dialogue between Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo and Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao. China Affairs commentator Li Yanming told the Epoch Times he believes the United States formed the working groups to soften the impact of the communist regime's financial crisis on the rest of the world. Mr. Li said, Washington is establishing economic communication channels with Beijing. It is also joining forces with neighboring countries in the Indo-Pacific region to accelerate the blockade of the Chinese Communist Party. Prevent China's Lehman moment. Mr. Li believes that China's Lehman moment is approaching at an accelerated pace. The term is a reference to the 2008 collapse of Lehman Brothers, at the time the fourth largest investment bank in the United States. The firm announced its filing for bankruptcy protection on September 15, 2008, triggering a global financial tsunami. Mr. Li said, China's real estate and local debt crises weigh down its entire financial and economic system. China's central bank has repeatedly cut interest rates to stimulate its depressed economy. However, the strategy has also increased the interest rate differential between the United States and China as the Fed has raised U.S. interest rates. As a result, the exchange rate of the Chinese yuan continues to fall, aggravating the outflow of capital. Ultimately, China's central bank is caught in a vicious cycle. A September poll by Bank of America showed that investors are bracing for further declines in Chinese stocks. Western countries are wary that China's financial markets crisis could have a domino effect on the global financial economy. President Joe Biden said at an August 10 political fundraiser that China is in trouble due to its slowed growth and high unemployment. China is a ticking time bomb threatening the world economy, he said. The economic slowdown has hit Asian and African economies the worst so far. In July, Japan reported its first drop in exports in over 2 years, after China cut back on auto and tech imports. In August, central bankers from South Korea and Thailand downgraded their growth forecasts, citing China's weak economy. Also in August, the South Korean government announced the establishment of a special pan-governmental inspection team tasked with monitoring major risk factors to the South Korean economy, particularly the impact of China's real estate crisis. Problems with real estate sector and debts. After 3 years of stringent anti-COVID measures and lockdowns, the Chinese economy has fallen to a historic recessionary inflection point, as evidenced by weak consumption and the decline of the real estate sector, which accounts for about 30% of China's GDP. Another factor aggravating China's economic woes is an enormous amount of local debt. Goldman Sachs estimates that Chinese local government debt has reached 94 trillion yuan, about $1.29 billion. In August, the CCP State Council dispatched investigators to more than 10 provinces to check their accounts and seek to reduce their debt. Huge local debts frequently leave public employees in China without a stable income and with wages in arrears, sometimes for months. Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.